Hey guys, welcome back. Today is the sequel to my series. And today we're going to be talking about these series that I am up to date on, completed, and DNF'd in 2022. Some of these we will have already briefly discussed in the previous video, so I'm not going to go into those quite as in depth, or we're going to be here a while because I have a total of 119 series that I was working on when I started the year. I completed 10 of them, I caught up on 20 of them, and I DNF'd 20 of them, so I'm still currently working on 69 different series. That is a lot of series, and I have no excuse for myself other than whoops. So get through all of these really quickly, and hopefully I can continue to whittle down my series in 2023. So first up, let's talk about the series that I am currently up to date on, the first of which is the X-Hex series by Aaron Sterling. I read the X-Hex in 2021 and then Kiss Curse in 2022. The Wedding Wish and the final book, I believe, comes out in 2023. This is following a family of witches in this small town and the angst and craziness that they end up getting up to, and the romance and the falling in love. It's just a great small town Gilmore Girls meets urban fantasy vibes. I had a really good time with it, and I'm excited for the Wedding Wish this year. I also caught up on The Glass Immortals by Brian McClellan with the only book in the Shadow of Lightning. We talked about that one last time. Then I also caught up on Plated Prisoner by Raven Kennedy. This is another fantasy romance following Auren, who is completely encased in gold, and she is the favor to King Midas, and there is a war on the horizon. This series is well loved. It's not my favorite. I want a little bit more of it than it gives me, but I'm so far in now, I kind of want to just see how it ends. I read Gild and Glint in 2021 and then caught up with Gleam and Glow with Sahar's book club, a fantasy romance book club. We read all of them together, so that's how I caught up on that. And then Gold is coming out, I believe, this year sometime, and if I'm not mistaken, that is the final book in the series. I also caught up on Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. Read the first book, Clown in a Cornfield, last year, and then Friendo Lives this year. This is a YA slasher that is just perfect for the Halloween season. It is exactly what you would expect, and it's a lot of fun. Next up, we have The Supernatural Investigations by B.B. Alston. I read Amari and the Night Brothers last year. It was a 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. And then read Amari and the Great Game this year. Again, still really enjoyed it. Not quite as good as Night Brothers, but I had a good time with it, and I definitely will be continuing. I don't know when book 3 is coming. I don't even know how many there are planned in this series, but I will definitely be continuing. Then I caught up on the Red Winter Chronicles, which was easy because there was only one book out. This is by Ed McDonald. We talked about it last time, an urban fantasy series. I also caught up on Dawnless Nights because, again, there's only one book out by U.G. Gutman. This is a epic hard fantasy, hard magic system type fantasy involving emotions and morally gray characters. Then I also caught up on Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Read House of Earth and Blood last year, really enjoyed it. House of Sky and Breath this year. Didn't love it as much. I was hoping for more than it gave, but I will definitely still be continuing. There was a choice that she made at the end that I know everybody was really excited about that I did not absolutely love. We have no idea when book 3 is coming, but we know it is coming, and I'll pick it up when it does. Next, we have The Titan Hoppers by Rob J. Hayes. Again, we just talked about this one. This is a progression sci-fi series that was easy for me to catch up on because there was only one book out. I enjoyed it. I'll be continuing, but not my absolute favorite series. Blood Trials by Annie Davenport. Read the Blood Trials this year. It is a fantasy sci-fi blend about a young woman who is going to be joining the Marines to try to solve the death of her grandfather. I enjoyed it. I think it is a YA to adult blend and would be good for new adult readers trying to get into the genre. Also completed or got up to date on Silver Under Nightfall. That was another easy one because it was a debut series this year. Urban fantasy, vampire hunter, little bit of romance with a little bit of a throuple, and I had a good time with it. Okay, so those are all of the 11 series that I managed to catch up on this year. Let's talk about the ones that I completed. For some reason it's telling me I completed 10 series, but I only count 9. So starting off with The Scholomance by Naomi Novik. This is one that the execution was just better or the idea was just better for me than the execution. It is about a school that is supposed to train people with magic on how to survive in the real world because there are these mouths that are feeding off of magic, and they will kill people to try to get their magic and their essence essentially. And our main character Elle is very, very strong, but she has curse magic, and it seems like everything that she does ends up going wrong. Like I guess said, this one just was better in theory than execution for me. It's a very stream of conscious writing style. Read Deadly Education in 2020 and The Last Graduate in 2021 and finished off The Golden Enclaves this year. Even though I didn't love it, somehow I managed to stay caught up, and I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back for that one. Then we have the DNF'd trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty, which is one of my favorite series. It's set in Cairo. It's a very political fantasy. There are devas and monsters. I just really enjoyed this. Read City of Brass actually twice starting in 2019 as I really needed to get into it, and then I needed to remember because I waited until 2021 to read Kingdom of Copper. Kingdom of Copper was absolutely fantastic, and then it finished it off with Empire of Gold this year, which was on my best of the year list. Highly recommend this if you're somebody trying to get into epic adult fantasy but you don't really know where to start. This is accessible but still really good. Next up we have the Rainwild Chronicles by Robin Hobb. This was part of the Catch Up book club. I managed to finish out these due to Becca and her book club. This is the third trilogy, I believe, in the Elderling universe, and it is following the Dragon's point or side of the story. I can't really give you much more than that because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. And it's actually the fourth, I think. Not the third, it is the fourth. Did Dragon Keeper in 2021, and then we finished off the other 3 books in 2022. Enjoyed. Glad I read. Now I need to move on to the 5th and the final trilogy. Next up we have the Tide Child series. We already talked about this one by R.J. Barker. Read it for the Backlist Book Club. Didn't absolutely love it, but it was alright, I guess. Maybe not sure. Anyway, it wasn't for me, but I did manage to read the entire thing this year, so thumbs up. Same thing for the Winnowing Flame by Jen Williams. We read that one for the Backlist Book Club, and so glad that I was able to complete that one this year. It is a fantasy sci-fi blend, and it's a lot of fun. Definitely recommend giving that one a try. I also completed The Sinner's Duet by Sophie Lark with There Are No Saints and There Is No Devil, one of which is on my top of the year, one of which is on my bottom of the year. If you're somebody that wants more of a traditional romance, then you might like the second book better, but you do have to read the first one. If you're somebody that wants a dark romance that's willing to go there, then the first book is what blew me away, following a woman who ends up entangled in this battle between 2 serial killers and falls in love with one of them. The Mind F series, we talked about that one by S.T. Abbey. This is 5 different novellas about a serial killer and the FBI agent that she falls in love with. It's a very Dexter meets Criminal Minds meets, not a Hallmark movie, but romance. Read all of them in basically a weekend and really enjoyed that series overall. And then we have The Burning Blade and Silver Eye. We did talk about this one last video as well, and that one is by Django Wexler. The 3rd book is not out yet, but I did complete it with an art. Really love this series. Ashes of the Sun was one of my favorite books of last year. It is a epic fantasy series that has a little bit of romance, and like the DNF'd series, I think is very accessible to people that are trying to get into romance. I do like the DNF'd series a little bit better as a whole. They're very different types of books, but I think that they serve essentially the same purpose. The Burning Blade and Silver Eye is a sci-fi fantasy blend with a really interesting world and magic system, whereas DNF'd is going to be a very interesting world, strong characters, and politics. Then last but not least, I finished Small Spaces, which is a middle grade series by Catherine Arden. I've been following this series as it comes out, each book following a different season. I started in 2019, read a book a year until they finished with Empty Smiles earlier this year. It's following a girl named Ollie who has recently lost her mother, and she ends up meeting the Smiling Man, and he's out to get her. And she and her friends must navigate how to defeat the Smiling Man. Okay, everybody, so those are all of the ones that I completed. Not as many as I would have hoped, but I did manage to knock off a few. Now let's talk about the 19, I believe, series that I DNF'd in 2022. First up, we have the Aurora Cycle by Amy Kaufman and J. Kristoff. This is a sci-fi series. I read the first book back in 2019 and just never had the drive to pick up the sequel, and now I'm really not reading a lot of young adult, so I just decided that if I haven't read it by now, I'm probably not going to, and I'm just gonna take it off of my series list. It's not a bad book. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I'm just not reading enough YA, and there's so many other sci-fi, like adult sci-fi, that I want to get to, and I'm kind of learning my taste more in sci-fi that I decided I am going to be DNFing that one. Frost Heart by Jamie Littler, I'm also going to be DNFing. This is another middle grade series. It's more than anything just that I'm not reading a lot of middle grade right now, and I never got really the drive to pick up books 2 and 3, even though I enjoyed book 1. But I read book 1 in 2020 and it's now 2023. So if I haven't continued by now, I'm probably not going to. This is a polar fantasy middle grade series and a lot of people love it. It's just not one that I plan to keep going with. Then we have Winter House, again, another middle grade series that I read for Middle Grade Monthly, I believe in 2021. Again, if I didn't continue on in 2022, then it's just, it was okay, but it wasn't my type of read. It's more of a mystery than a fantasy, and it's not a bad book. It's just not something that I want to continue with. Shattered Sea by Joe Abercrombie. This is more of a young adult series by him. It's one that I started this year and probably will not continue. Again, not a bad book, but I just needed a little bit more grit to it. If somebody else were to continue that I respect, loves it, then I can be persuaded to continue. That's not like a hard DNF, but it's not one that I want to have on my list to go reaching for because I'm excited about reading it. Then we have Stalking Jack the Ripper, which I started in 2021. This is another YA series that, while good, just didn't really grip me. It's a YA historical mystery by Carrie Maniscalco. It was okay, but not reading a lot of YA anymore, so I decided to take it off my list as well. Then we have Ice Planet Barbarians. I read the first 2 of these. They're quick, they're fun, they are very, very smutty sci-fi romance, and people are eating them up like candy, and they were fun, but I just don't feel any compelling need to continue because I feel like they're all going to be the same variation, a different variation of the same book. I'm also going to be DNFing the Wicked Villain series by Katie Robert. I've read 3. I've tried, but I just don't think I want to continue. Katie Robert is a little bit too much smut, a little too little plot, I think, for me. This is the Disney Villains. Not the Disney Villains. This is a series where the Disney characters fall in love with the villains. It's an interesting concept, but again, not enough plot for me. The Dark Gods, which is City of Dusk by Tara Sim. This one just had more potential than I think it lived up to. It was a very YA writing style. This is, again, one that I'm a little curious about and kind of think maybe I want to continue, but probably going to use Cassidy as the guinea pig on to decide whether or not I'm going to continue it, because it just did not work for me. It was one of my worst books of the year, but the premise is really good, so I keep hoping. This is probably going to end up turning into like the Skull Man series, where the idea is better than the execution, and I should have just given up. Then we have the Dream Blood, which we talked about before, by N.K. Jemisin. Read the first book, DNF'd the second book about halfway through. It just wasn't working for me. Fantasy set in Cairo, dream magic. Then we have Edinburgh Nights by T.L. Hichu, I think is how you say that. Starting with The Library of the Dead. I read this in 2021, never had the urge to continue. I didn't love book 1, but I was hopeful because the idea of a Library of the Dead is really cool and it's set in Edinburgh. There wasn't really much Library of the Dead and the main character is really freaking annoying, so I just don't think that I have any drive to continue it. Then we have The Locked Tomb by Tasmin Muir, which is probably going to hurt a lot of people. This is another one that I could be persuaded to continue. Read Gideon the Ninth in 2021. The humor just was not really for me. It is a sci-fi with a little bit of a murder mystery, and it's got a lot of dark humor, but it almost went a little too far for me. I don't know. I could be persuaded, but as of right now, I'm not anxious to continue. I don't own the second book, and so I think I'm gonna put it down. Then we have Children of Time. We talked about this one last time. I did try to start that this year. I've DNF'd it twice. Got pretty far in the second time, but I'm still kind of curious about it and might continue it. This is a epic sci-fi that to me read a little bit like a textbook, and that's part of the reason that I don't want to continue, by Adrian Tchaikovsky, but I could be persuaded. So let me know down in the comments if you're gonna try to persuade me. Go for it. Next up, we have The Articles of Faith by David Ragg. This is the Black Hawks. A lot of these last few we've already talked about in my series that I started this year. Just decided not to continue with it. The humor wasn't for me, not enough fantasy. Romance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. It was just for the Late Night Crew Book Club. Was not my favorite. Won't be continuing. It's a contemporary romance. The Rat Queens Volume 1 and Heartstopper Volume 1. Rat Queens just because I think it's on indefinite hiatus with no significant conclusion, and I don't like graphic novels enough to put myself through that. And then Heartstopper just because it was not for me. Vicious Lost Boys by Nikki St. Crow. I only read one book. It is a reverse harem kind of fantasy romance centered around Peter Pan. And it's a very dark romance. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it, but no significant drive to continue. The Pendergast series by Preston and Child, read the first 2 books. They're very formulaic. I can see that being the same thing over and over and over again for every book. There are 20 books. I don't have the patience to catch up on 20 books. This is a mystery type series with a little bit of a urban fantasy undertone to it. And then we also have Malazan by Stephen Erickson with Gardens of the Moon. Again, this is one I could be persuaded to at least attempt book 2, but it was a little bit too convoluted, a little bit too pretentious in the writing style and what he was trying to accomplish. So I did not love it. I would definitely need a recap of it before I continued. But again, if you are so inclined, let me know down in the comments if you think I should continue, and I might try it. I might consider continuing. Okay guys, so those are all of the series that I caught up on, completed, or DNF'd in 2022. I'm hoping to knock down the series list even more in 2023. When we take those out, what I am left with for 2023 is 87 series. Somehow my numbers aren't really matching up because it says that I've caught up on 16 series, so I definitely need to look at that a little bit more because I feel like I'd only caught up on, what, 10 before? Okay guys, thank you so very much for watching. This is one of my final end of year content videos. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know down in the comments how many series you managed to complete or catch up on this year, or if there were any that you DNF'd. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box down below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you want it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!